you guys see the screen, or there's two I see on my monitor? I just want to make sure you're able to see the presentation screen.
Nope, that's it. That's perfect. Oh, yep.
All right.
That's great. All right, so you can skip to the next slide. This is just a brief agenda for tonight's presentation. We appreciate everyone's patience as we get through the entire presentation. And as Haley mentioned, we will take questions at the end. I am going to briefly talk about the mission of the company, introduce the team, give a broad overview, and then turn it over to the architects, the traffic engineer, operations and security personnel. Next, although I just lost it.
All right, there we go.
Okay. Okay, so this is the mission of the company, which I will let you read. But something that has really stood out for me in this team and the ownership's is this team and the ownership's commitment to respect, accountability, and safety. This meeting tonight is really the first step in the process, and we want to put on offer that we will meet with anyone and everyone who wants to meet in person or virtually, and we can bring any combination of the team. But the owner, Arish, Halani, will always be in attendance. And we understand, that adult use cannabis retail stores are a relatively new phenomenon, and that the community has questions and concerns. And while these stores are relatively new and only a few are open in Boston, the owner and the operations and security team is best in class. And we want to continue to meet with the community, discuss your concerns, bring our expertise and experience, and shed some light on the day-to-day operations of a cannabis retail store, and to be accountable to you. And I want to reiterate, we have time. Best case scenario, this is a 2.5-year process. Okay, next slide. The operations team has worked in the medical and adult use cannabis industry for years and can provide insight into what to expect with a cannabis shop in your neighborhood. Likewise, the security team, both on-site personnel and the surveillance, bring unparalleled experience with staff with a long history in law enforcement. So I know from listening to other proposed retail shops in other neighborhoods, residents are concerned that ownership is not going to be present, or that once the store gets permitted or opens, the owner is not going to be accessible to address the issues. But with that being said, in contrast, I'd like to introduce the owner, Arish Halani, and just want to give a little bit of background on him. Arish and his education in cannabis in 2013, when he decided to investigate cannabis as a remedy for a family member suffering from clinical anxiety, depression, and other mental illnesses. He spent 3 years researching cannabis and learning more about the different strains, treatments, remedies. During that time, he spent educating his family and colleagues about the potential benefits and side effects of cannabis. And finally, he was able to defeat the stigma and within his own family, and was able to get their support to provide cannabis for the sick family member, who today nearly has eliminated all of her pharmaceutical prescriptions and is able to manage the conditions that she has with cannabis. Arish is background with the technology company that provides technology solutions with retail businesses. He also spent many years at JP Morgan in the commercial banking arm of the bank, underwriting loans for middle market companies, with revenue ranging from 2 million to 200 million. But in 2018, Arish decided to pursue his vision of opening a cannabis retail establishment and began working in the industry at one of Boston's first medical dispensaries called Patient Care, which is located on Milk Street in downtown Boston. At the medical dispensary, Arish provided guidance and education to each patient with medical marijuana needs, and he assisted every patient to ensure that they were receiving the correct medication that best benefited the patient's specific illness. So Arish is a first-generation U.S. citizen, has lived in the greater Boston area for over 6 years. He lives in South Boston and has lived there for the last 3. He's committed to being an active member of the community and wants to participate in the Andrews Square Civic Association, West Broadway Neighborhood Association, to follow what's happening in the community and to be present and hear feedback from neighbors. Arish intends to remain in South Boston to open the cannabis establishment and manage it full time. And, unlike other owners, Arish will be a constant presence at the store. He's going to provide, he will give you his contact information tonight, and is accessible to neighbors and abutters to address issues personally. Our website's ogleaf.org, where you can find contact information, but again, we'll give it to you at the end of the night. So I will turn it over to you, Arish, just for a brief introduction, and then I can introduce the rest of the team.
Thanks. Can everybody hear me? Let me check.
Yep.
Thanks for the introduction, Christine. It's a pleasure to be here. It has been a long journey from site location to working with the various community members and having a long journey in cannabis in a variety of areas in this state, as well as working at a medical dispensary. I look forward to working with the community, working with all of my consultants, my team members, and my advisors to ensure that we have a robust operation, a safe operation, and one that the community can be proud of. And if there are any concerns, if ever, that they can have a firsthand communication with the operator and owner of that business, which will be myself. So thank you for your time, and I hope that everyone has an opportunity to listen to the presentation, the various members of the team, and feel free to ask any questions at the end.
Great. So I'll just quickly introduce the rest of the team. Yeah, we can flip to those. So Halani brings 35 years of his experience in opening and operating multiple franchise and retail stores. Peter DeCaro will be on the management operations side. He brings direct experience in all aspects of adult use cannabis, including founding Resonate, the Resonate brand, and that has a retail store open in Worcester. Matthew Yee, who's also on the retail operations side, also brings years of experience in the cannabis industry, managing both recreational and medicinal stores. His management approach focuses on continuing education and consistent training for both managers and staff. On the security side, Joe Harris is the head of Guardian Security. Joe has the most impressive resume with 39 years in Boston law enforcement. He served in almost all roles of the police department, from patrol and most recently superintendent of Boston Police. Chris Burns from Minuteman Security will be bringing his years of experience in electronic security to provide a custom remote security system for 159 Old Colony. He has extensive history and knowledge on the regulations, enforcement, and how to keep the community safe utilizing electronic surveillance. Michael Vaughn and I work together with over 40 years of collective experience in entitlement, public advocacy, and government relations. Much of our experience is in the entitlement of large-scale development projects in Boston, but we also have a lot of experience working with restaurants and bars, many of which happen to carry a lot of the same community concerns. Sean Manning and Chelsea Bouchard are the traffic engineers. They're both well-known entities from BHB. They have been involved in the planning and development of access, circulation, and parking solutions for many of Boston's large-scale development projects, but they also more recently have experience with adult use cannabis locations in Greater Boston. And finally, Eric Gould is a founder and principal of Helicon Design Group, the architect for this project, and he brings his years of experience from all types of projects, including corporate interiors, residential, and standalone retail. And last but not least, Efi Troxel is a designer on this project, handling the design and production. Next slide. So this is just to provide location context. I'm sure everyone watching this is aware of the location. It's the current home of Boston Mirror and Bay State Glass. This site is located obviously in the historically industrial and commercial area of South Boston, though we recognize the growing residential community in and around the site. Next. And this is a map that shows the half-mile buffer this shop will provide if it's approved. Per the regulations, I'm sure everyone is familiar, but no other cannabis shop can be sited within this half-mile radius. And we believe that this site is off the beaten path, and it is being designed in a manner that really offers discrete operations. While there is arguably no good place to site a cannabis shop, we believe that this location is the best, as the buffer protects the more traditional residential neighborhood of South Boston, including Andrew Square and most of West Broadway. And next slide. And actually now I'm going to turn it over to Eric and Ife, who will talk about the site, existing conditions, and the proposed improvements.
Thank you, Christine. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Eric Gould, principal and founder of Halani Design Group. Also like to introduce Aoife Troxel, who is our lead designer on this project. Halani has been in Boston for 30 years. Our portfolio includes a wide variety of project types, including residential, commercial, industrial, interior design, plus many others. And we invite everyone to look at our work at halacondesign.com. We take great pride in working with owners and tenants, officials, and the community. We also take great pride in particularly seeing projects through every detail, and in particular the closeout phase, which we find defines the most successful projects, is seeing them all the way through the end. Our particular expertise is in the adaptive reuse and renovation of existing buildings, which require knowledge of bringing up older facilities to current standards and usability, such as this one at 159 Old Colony. This particular slide shows the exterior of the building, which we will be updating to a state-of-the-art retail cannabis facility. The project will comprise of what we refer to as gut rehab, demolishing the existing interior and upgrading the exterior facade to a modern retail facility. The exterior, the stucco, signage, decorative roof will be stripped, and new glazing currently shown here will be installed, coordinating with the existing structural systems and window layout. New cladding will wrap the building as shown for new appearance. All the doors and glass will be new as well. I believe the site plan being shown on a later slide will show new parking, 5 new spaces behind the building. The exterior windows will have, and the interior vestibule glazing will have decorative glazing film obscuring passers-by's view into the retail area of the store, and improved compliance with CCC, Cambridge, the Cannabis Commission guidelines. This glazing film will not be solid or opaque, so as to result in a negative anonymous look and feel to the business. We can go to the floor plan, next slide. The floor plan illustrates a vestibule size for a queue of 6 people, approximately. For a brief ID check, there is interior queuing for approximately 23 customers once inside the store. 10 or 11 employees are anticipated at this facility, with 5 plus or minus at the counter at any time. Total design capacity in this scheme is for 45 occupants. The secure product area walls and ceilings will have additional security design, including additional layers of sheathing, and lath secure area doors will be coordinated with the electronic security system. There are 2 exits planned for the facility, with max travel distances calculated at 65 to 85 feet. The maximum travel distance for mercantile use is 250 feet, so we're well within that. The interior will also have new finishes and Cannabis Control Commission regulation compliant displays, cabinets, and millworks. There will be an aesthetically pleasing array of finishes, interior graphics, and signage consistent with the modern cannabis retailing industry, which will be clean, modern, casual, and professional in appearance. So I think I can pass this off to Sean Manning for discussion on the transit issues. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sean Manning with VHB, and just some important transportation information to share relative to the project. So if you look on this slide, this is simply showing the existing building, which Eric, went through. The building is going to remain, but it's going to be obviously significantly upgraded and renovated. The site does have 5 off-street parking spaces in the back, which of course we're going to continue to utilize for customers. Also 3 on-street spaces adjacent to the frontage of the building itself, although Old Colony Avenue is unregulated on-street parking for much of this section of the street, and we do believe for the most part operations are not going to coincide with residential parking, which tends to be stronger in the evening. Loading and service is going to be handled via the back. There's a discrete door. If you looked on the floor plan previously, it's really near the 2 parking spaces in the rear. Loading is not going to coincide with peak business operations. It's going to happen outside of business hours. It's going to be random for security reasons, and the security team can talk about that a little bit more. Maybe we can flip to the next slide. So this is a transit slide just showing where the site is relative to MBTA services. No bus routes right on Old Colony Avenue, but under a 5-minute walk to Andrew Square Red Line Station, and many bus routes that terminate there. And the point of this is, while certainly there are going to be folks that elect to drive and park at the site to do a transaction, we expect many people to walk, to use bikes, and to take transit. And the other thing I would say as it relates to parking, maybe we just flip back to the previous slide, staff parking is going to be accommodated elsewhere. So we are seeking off-street, off-site staff parking somewhere nearby. We don't have that information to share just yet. But the point being, the spaces that are adjacent to the building itself are going to be exclusively for customers, not the on-street ones. They're not exclusive, but we would expect, given that they're next to the building, that it would be our customers that would use those spaces. And then finally, the proponent is very committed to encouraging the use of alternative forms of transportation, which of course the city of Boston is going to want them to do. So whether it's T-Pass subsidies or designating someone within their organization to be their transportation coordinator, to tap into TMAs in South Boston, do anything we can to support the use of alternative modes of transportation. We're obviously very interested and committed in doing that. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
And I think we'll just turn it over to Peter and Matthew now.
Hello, everyone. My name is Peter DiCaro. I'm the Retail Operations Advisor for the project. Thank you for hearing our plan this evening. As you can see on the slide here, the hours of operation are intending to be 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. In terms of staff, as we pointed out before, we're looking at 10 on site, 20 total. That'll be a blend of full-time and part-time employees. We're obviously looking to hire from within the Boston area and bring in those within the local community to support our project here. The delivery operations, as we pointed out, they're completely randomized. We've launched 2 or 3 other stores now here in the Commonwealth, and we've managed this process in terms of both deliveries and shipping and receiving. So we're very accustomed to making sure that this process is seamless, that our vehicles are unidentifiable, and that, again, it's completely randomized and has little to no impact to the neighbors or any of those in the community. In terms of the traffic protocols, we will be monitoring the site from within. And we will be checking IDs and such outside of the perimeter according to CCC regulations. So we'll also be monitoring the exterior of the building during those hours and trying to minimize whatever impact that could have on the neighboring community. And in terms of cash handling, which is a relatively easy process, things have changed. There are local banks that do participate in the cannabis industry. So the risk of a security breach as a result of theft, it certainly has been minimized over the the recent years. I know that they're in the early phases of the project. We did suspect, or we've seen in other sites that may occur, but there has been little to no cases here in the Commonwealth of that. So we will, in terms of the cash delivery, our banks are local, so we will have a designated service that will be qualified by the Cannabis Control Commission and will meet all of those necessary requirements. Those will be unmarked vehicles with staff that won't be noticed. They'll be dressed conspicuously to blend into the environment. So in our experience, again, we've operated 2 or 3 of these sites here in the Commonwealth with no emergencies. There hasn't been any negative impacts on any of the neighbors. In fact, what we've been very successful in doing is launching sites that, if anything, has helped the local community in terms of improving the exterior, the perimeter, improving security protocols, and working hand in hand with law enforcement to ensure that if there are any potential on-site consumption activities or any other theft or even damage around the perimeter, we've been able to work with law enforcement to submit that camera footage, and we've helped the law enforcement to actually apprehend various suspects for a number of different issues. So with this site, we feel pretty confident in our ability to execute as we have in the past. And again, look forward to any questions regarding those operations. Thank you.
And now we'll talk to Joe.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thanks for having me here. As you looked at my bio, I just wanted to point out another small thing about my experience with the Boston Police Department as a deputy superintendent overseeing Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan. I've had some experience with working with a number of business owners in the Dudley Square, Codman Square, Four Corners location, other locations, regarding target hardening and improving their areas to provide a better shopping experience for their customers. And recently, after retirement, I've been working with Guardian Security and have been involved in advising cannabis business owners in Dorchester and Rosendale, a couple of locations there. Looking at the slide, it's pretty straightforward. The store will be well lit with state-of-the-art security cameras operating around the clock, 24/7. The nondescript entrance, people who don't know what the business is won't be able to tell what it is just by looking at it. There'll be no flashing neon signs or any indication of what's being sold in the store. Security patrolling outside, I think we've already talked about this, but to prevent loitering and prevent anyone from consuming the product in the area after purchasing. Checks on all customers coming into the store. Have to be 21 years old. And I want to point out that the last two there, all the staff were behind display cases with interior security cameras monitored 24/7, and staff, manager, and security personnel in the store during the hours of operation. I think those are important for people to understand. Additionally, I want to point out that I have spoken to a former colleague, Captain Joe Boyle. He's the commanding officer, Area C6, and he has indicated a willingness to help us, providing us with police patrols and acquiring police details if needed. We'll be sharing our plans with the Boston Police Department and the Boston Fire Department. And as things go forward after opening, we'll remain committed to working with the community and any interested parties to make adjustments to the plan and address any issues or concerns that may arise. So, I realize Can you see me now? I didn't have my picture on.
Now we can. Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm learning. But I'll be here to answer any questions after the presentation. So, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Joe. We'll turn it over to you, Chris.
All right, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Burns. I'm with Minuteman Security Technologies. Minuteman is a local leader in security integrations, electronic security integration systems. I've worked with Arish and the Halanis on a number of their projects in the past, and we've worked to design a comprehensive system that will work hand in hand with Joe and his team, and to protect the premises both during business hours and after hours as well. We take into account all of the regulations put forth by the CCC. There's going to be 24/7 video recording that needs to be stored for a minimum of 90 days. So if anything happens, they'll have a very detailed video recording of the incident. It's going to have a monitored alarm system. If anybody were to break in or any vandalism or anything happen after hours, the police will be dispatched. It'll have some access control as well. So Joe and his team, in the event of an emergency during business hours, can lock the building down just at the touch of a button. And furthermore, I know that sometimes concerns of queuing or crowd forming outside of the building at establishments like this. The cameras can actually detect if there's any loitering or line forming outside of the building, and send an alert to Joe and his team so that they can go and disperse the people that are mulling around outside. So it's very comprehensive. It's very detailed and can be very effective. To meet the needs of the industry and the customer as well. That's about all I have.
Great. And we just have 2 more slides, Haley. I'm going to turn it over to Michael Vaughn.
Thank you for making time for us tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you to the Halanis for having us on, the team. It's Christine and my responsibility to make sure that we're reaching out to all the abutters, to the neighborhood groups, Andrew Square and West Broadway, and to all the interested abutters and neighbors. And it's our obligation and responsibility to make sure that we're answering everyone's questions and addressing anyone's concerns. So as Christine said, we're at the start of the process here. This is the kickoff tonight. We're willing and would like to meet with as many people as possible. If you'd like to meet with us, please email or call, and we're happy to sit with you or Zoom with you or call with you, whatever is best, and listen to your questions, comments, concerns. And again, it's our obligation and responsibility to make sure that we're answering those questions and addressing those concerns. So appreciate your time and look forward to working with you. Thank you.
And we just have this last slide here that just lays out the possible permitting path. In recent experience with other stores that we watched, it's really a 2.5 year plus process. So, we're going to be here a while. So we do feel like we have time to do the appropriate outreach in the community and want to really become, an accessible part of it. So with that, Haley, that concludes our presentation. I just want to remind everyone, our website's ogleaf.org, and that has our contact information for anyone who wants to meet following this presentation, and we'll open it up to questions. Haley, I'll just, moderate, point the questions to the appropriate team member.
Thank you. So again, I just want to reiterate the rules. I want to make it clear that there's no decision being made tonight, and that at no time will be acceptable to be disrespectful to anyone during the meeting. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. There's no right or wrong opinion. We are here tonight to try to collect as many comments and questions for this proposal. I'm not here to facilitate debates among neighbors. I ask that all questions be directed toward the applicant and myself. The applicant will answer all questions related to the proposal to the best of their ability, and I will answer questions specific to the city's process. If either of us are unable to answer those, we will get you the answers as soon as we can. This is an open comment period, meaning that if you do not get called on tonight, or if you think of questions if you think your question might not have been answered, all you need to do is reach out and we will work with you to get that information for you. This is not a debate on the legalization of marijuana. That debate occurred at the ballot box, and we are here today because it is overwhelmingly supported in the city. Lastly, I'd like to say that some residents have reached out saying that they're upset that the city even entertained this address. I want to make it very clear that every applicant has the right to have a public meeting. It would be illegal to refuse them a process. So I just want to make that clear. Any applicant who goes through the process can propose whatever location they want, and they are required to have a process, and it would be illegal for us to deny them a community process. I want to recognize Ed Flynn is here joining us today, and people representing Michael Flaherty, Nick Collins, and David Beal are also with us. So if you are on a phone and not on a computer, press *3. That's *3 to raise your hand for a question. And if you're on a computer, just press the hand raise. All right, so I'm going to go through 1 second. John McGann.
Yes. Yes, John McGann, President, CEO of Gavin Foundation, South Boston resident. I have a few different questions that I'd like to ask if I could. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. One is, I think it was Sean mentioned about people getting rides and dropped off from various facilities, but isn't this a recreational shop, so they wouldn't necessarily be coming from facilities? So I was just trying to get clarification on that. My second question was, if there's potentially 10 employees here and only 5 parking spaces, and you're thinking about using a few on the street, I know you mentioned off-site parking, but parking is a real issue in that part of town. My office is across the street at 5458 Old Colony, so there really isn't a lot of parking there. So I think that that's going to be a bigger problem than you have anticipated. And especially if you're going to have 5 parking spaces and you're going to have 5 people at the counter, I really worry about the math there and what would be hanging around outside, etc. The other piece is, as you know, that whole area, Gold's Gym, and the whole back side of that, as well as some of the Cole Hersey, is also under renovation to build more residential facilities down there. So we know that that's going to turn more residential than perhaps it is today. And last but not least, my major concern is that site is directly between our transitional age youth program and our outpatient office. So I have serious concerns with our young people that are going to be walking up and down that corridor with the kind of activity that these facilities bring to the neighborhood. And we have taken rides around to a few different facilities in different areas to see the kind of traffic that they create, and they do create traffic. So those are my concerns and questions. Thank you.
So Sean, do you want to address the traffic? And I think when you mentioned facilities, I think you were just talking about people coming to the retail center.
Yeah, so I maybe I misspoke, and I apologize for that. I was just suggesting that folks will arrive here via different modes of travel. So sure, people are going to drive and park or get dropped off, but we believe plenty, because of the residential in the area, will walk or bike, and we're proximate to a lot of transit services. So we still have some work to do to quantify and formalize that and include that in a submission to the city. But our belief is that will take the edge off the parking need a little bit. That being said, people, of course, are going to drive and park, and we need to have parking. And maybe that's a segue to your second question. Our staff are not going to park in these parking spaces. These are customer parking spaces. You know, doing this for a living, parking is a challenge in the city of Boston, and this proponent is committed to finding off-site parking spaces that they are going to lease for their staff. So we will, when we have that information specifically, we will share it with the city and with the community. But we agree, we can't just have the staff park in the off-site parking spaces and have no place for the customers, for sure. As it relates to traffic as a whole, and we're doing a number of these. We get this question all the time, and people oftentimes cite the facility that opened in Brookline Village a year and a half ago as an example. That is just not what we're seeing as we move forward, or what we'd expect to see. A place that's busy like Brookline Village, that was really one of the first retail adult use facilities that opened east of the Mississippi River, and because of that, it was a big destination for traffic. There are over 50 of these open in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts now, and I believe the open licenses in the city of Boston is something like 52. So at some point down the road, there could be as many as 52 adult use marijuana dispensaries in Boston alone. Forget Cambridge and other cities, and we're doing many of these right now. So I think the perceived traffic impacts that folks see at some of the first that opened and were on the news is just not going to be the case long term. And certainly everyone is committed to making this work and making sure that there aren't undue traffic impacts, right down to people hanging around and clogging up the sidewalk. We don't want that to happen. So we're going to be very focused on that and making sure that this works. So I hope I answered your questions.
I think you tried to answer the questions. I think it still comes down to, you got 5 parking spaces and you're going to have at least 5 people on the counter. So I'm assuming that you're expecting a fair amount of traffic there, people in and out. And so I do have concerns with people hanging outside, being in the walking distance to our programs, as well as parking.
And maybe Joe Harris, you could speak to just, the security. I think our goal is to prevent that, John, and, we'll have security personnel on site and increase that if necessary, and include, patrols in the street, in the surrounding streets, to make sure that people aren't hanging around and using the product.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I guess I didn't have it unmuted. I just wanted to point out that, we have our security officers will be outside monitoring the traffic, monitoring any people that are in lines. And we don't want to have a lot of people standing around the store waiting to get in. And we're going to make sure that the vehicle traffic keeps moving along. And understand that that's a busy thoroughfare. And, we have to be concerned with traffic building up in the street there. We're also going to, ask the Boston Police Department to come by and make frequent patrols too and help us out with that. They've indicated that, their willingness to do that. So we're aware of that. We'll have people outside all the time monitoring the people in line and any traffic issues.
And I don't want to monopolize the question and answer period here, but if you go by there, we've already got traffic issues with Dunkin' Donuts backed up in the street. You're going to be right on top of that. So that's a concern. And as far as people milling around outside, I think we only need to go, a mile down the road to BMC and see what certain clinics can attract and have people hanging around outside. So I don't know what Joe can really do to move that traffic along. That foot traffic, what authority he would have.
Well, as I stated, the only thing we can do is have our security monitor the area and work with Boston Police to try to things along.
Well, I can maybe amplify that answer as well. Again, just my experience with these adult use facilities is it's not, and I work for BMC too. Oh, by the way, so I'm acutely aware of what you're alluding to, and that is not what adult use brings to the community. In my opinion, it brings an opportunity for people to get a product that's regulated, It's safe. It brings dollars back to the community, and it doesn't bring marijuana to the community. Marijuana's there already. It's going to put drug dealers out of business who will sell unregulated product to anybody, and that's how I think you really got to think of it and perceive it. It's not. Again, in my experience, people, buy what they need to buy. It's for the most part, young professionals, a lot like the faces that you see on screen here, and they go home. And that's 95% of what happens. And the few instances where someone may loiter or hang around, there are measures in place to make sure that doesn't happen, whether it's security, it's connection with the police. And frankly, if you have to, it's banning people from coming in the store if there are problems, and that you just ban them, and that's it.
This is Peter DiCaro. To add to that slightly, and I know that there's an understanding that there's a certain community that may loiter around the building and potentially cause issues, but based upon consumer data, we do see many young professionals, but we actually see a larger consumer base that is 40 years and older, and also coming from more white collar types of industry. So while there's a perception out there that it may draw in a certain type of element, it actually couldn't be more counterintuitive. In addition, once transactions are performed, which given a smaller store will seek to turn those transactions in a quicker fashion, we'll also be providing them with packaging that will have no that will not illustrate any type of cannabis type of purchases whatsoever. So people coming into the building will be ushered out quickly. Once leaving, they will have packaging that will not reflect that these are cannabis products. Those simply look like a consumer walking in and out of a retail store. So I think that from all of the case studies that we've seen in all of the stores that we've opened from Northampton to Worcester and into the Boston area, we have yet to see that there's been a negative impact, but rather a very positive impact in that the store and the exterior of the building and the facility has been upgraded. And once security protocols are properly implemented, such as in other facilities, we've asked our staff to move or to park elsewhere, and we've absorbed those costs. So you bring up a very valid concern, and one that we can handle internally in a very positive way with our team, and externally through other means of trying to support alternative transportation methods. We think that we can manage that very effectively. Now, again, this is speculative, but I can assure you that we'll take every measure from an operational standpoint to minimize that impact, because at the end of the day, when you consider zoning across the state of Massachusetts, the goal here is to service an immediate radius. And we believe that there's going to be more value to those consumers in that immediate area that can use foot traffic or alternative forms to walk to the store, in addition to those that will be driving by.
And I'll just conclude with Haley to let you know that Gavin Foundation, which employs 275 people in Boston and provides critical services for people with addiction in the city, is opposed to this project being so close to our recovery treatment programs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. That's noted. I just want to run through the list of speakers so people know when they're up for the question. So first, we're going to have Ed Flynn. Ed, I'll unmute you after the list. Then we have John P. Then we have Patty. Then we have Linda. Then we have Phyllis Corbett. Then we have Laurie. We have Dennis. We have David B. We have Brian Nee and Margaret Lynch. And then I'll look for any other hands that are raised, but that's the order it's going to go in for right now, so you know who's before and after you. Ed, I'm going to unmute you right now. 1 second. Ed, you're unmuted.
Thank you, Haley. Haley, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ed.
Okay, thank you, Haley, for sponsoring and conducting this meeting, and for your professionalism. We appreciate it. I just wanted to reiterate what John said. John McGann, there's probably not a person in the state more well-respected in the recovery community, helping people get into recovery services, than John McGann. And this facility that you're proposing, this marijuana facility, is just too close to programs that we're working so hard and struggling at times to get people into recovery and into services. But it's people that, like the Gavin House and the Gavin Foundation, other groups, they're doing their best to help people. And I think the last thing we need is to have a marijuana facility next to or in and around this facility. I agree with John. I can't support this. I don't think it's a good proposal. I don't mean to be a skunk at a lawn party, but it's not a good proposal. We're trying to build up this neighborhood. It's a residential neighborhood. I represent Andrews Square as well. That neighborhood is struggling because of what's happening on Mass Ave, Albany Street. We have a lot of quality of life issues, and we're trying to build these neighborhoods up. There's a lot of families moving into the Old Colony Avenue area. Also, the traffic is nonstop on Old Colony Avenue. It's difficult to get to this facility by public transportation. You're kind of in between Andrew Station and Broadway Station. It's difficult to walk there. The sidewalks are challenged at best. But I can't support this. I don't think it's a good proposal. I don't think we can also rely on the Boston Police to patrol the area as well. They're doing an excellent job, but we just can't ask them to step up and patrol marijuana facilities in the city. And that's how I feel about it. And I'm sticking with the residents of this area. They've been through hell for so many years, and they're trying to build their neighborhood back up, and that's where I stand.
Thank you, Ed. Next up, we have John. 1 second, John. John, you're unmuted.
Good evening, Haley, and elected officials, community members, and Team OG Leaf. I just had a couple of questions or observations about the whole process. I obviously understand it is quite lengthy. Going back to Mayor Walsh and I believe City Councilor Kim Janey were involved in getting the city ordinance through. From that, my take on that was it's very important to get first out of the gate per se because of the half-mile buffer zone between shops. So South Boston not occupying a huge land factor, that is key to be one of the first ones to establish. Now, it's also my understanding that the normal course is it will pass through ISD or inspectional services. Basically, it will be passed to ZBA, the zoning board. Now, my question is ZBA making active decisions based on their own processes, or are they deferring only to the state guidelines set by the CCC? And obviously, in that same note, the host community agreement that, you know, hopefully for OG Leaf would be favorable, but we shall see how that comes to play out, is incrementally important. But my question is for the elected officials and whoever may know the exact process of how this plays out, what type of community agreements and how is it staged to engage open and honest communications with civic associations and citizens of the community?
John, I can email you and everybody else who signed up the full list. The Cannabis Board has just recently been established, so it's all pretty new to most of us, especially since we haven't had a cannabis establishment that's moved forward. We've had 2 other ones in South Boston, both in the 4 Point neighborhood, but both of them are kind of at a standstill right now. But I can email you the full Cannabis Board, like their full schedule. But if the team wants to say anything about what they would plan to do, you guys can speak on that.
I can speak briefly to the community benefits and some of the items that will come with our proposal. I think Haley hit it right on the head that there are a lot of regulatory changes that are have come up in regards to the Boston Cannabis Board, and it might be more fruitful to take some time and read all the ordinances and get up to speed with the regulations, so to understand the process. But one item I can say is in regards to the timeline, we are projecting that given all of the new regulations and the type of applicant we are and the variety of city and state processes that we need to go through, we expect to open around June 2025. So that's something that I can let the community know as an operator. So
Thank you.
And just to close out, Haley, as a lifelong resident and business owner in the community, at this point in time, I would be against it for the same reasons that the previous speakers, Councilor Flynn, John McGann, have mentioned.
Thank you, John. That's noted. Patty, you're up.
Okay, hi folks. I'd like to echo John McGann's concerns regarding the recovery services across the street. John does amazing work in the neighborhood, and I don't think this is a good fit for those young people struggling to have this in their face every day. I also, Council Flynn made so many really good points, and we appreciate all his support trying to upgrade Andrew Square. And we don't consider this an upgrade. In fact, we voted against it. Against any marijuana, recreational marijuana shops a few months ago at a meeting. And if so you may not be real familiar with the neighborhood, but across the street, there's a really tight-knit family neighborhood. And you often see hockey nets set up when you drive by. Some of those kids are members at the South Boston Boys and Girls Club where I work. And today at one of our meetings, we went over a member survey that was taken in February of this year. And this question was posed to our preteens 10, 11, and 12 years old. And the number of preteens who did not use marijuana in 2020 was 83%. Well, we do the survey every year. It's from Boys and Girls Clubs of America. And last year, the same question was posed, and it was 95% that didn't use it. So a shop like this, a few blocks away from the club, I just think it gives them if they're making a decision, they think it's okay to smoke pot. So I am fully against this proposal.
Thank you, Patty. Next up, we have Linda. One second. Linda, you're unmuted.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. As a lifelong resident of Andrew Square and a voter who voted for this marijuana type plant, built business, I personally agree with John, Patty, and everybody who has spoken. It is just the wrong spot. I personally feel it'd be better in a mall or type situation. The other concern that I have is that your security around the building would probably be wonderful. But what happens when those people walk away with a valuable product and an expensive product because it's a good product? And they walk up the street and they come down my street where I have people who are always hanging out because we have such an influx of unfortunates that it would probably cause more crime. This is my vision that I see, that they would be watching, that they would look, because it's just not a good situation. You're far from the T station if people are walking, and if they are driving, it's causing more traffic. We do have a beautiful neighborhood right across the street that have a lot of children over there. I am against it as it is proposed, where it is proposed. We need to protect what we have already built. We just can't have something else coming in that might destroy what we have worked so hard to get going. And John McGann, I give you all the credit because you have done wonders with your Gavin House Foundation. And I don't know how many you've saved, but I mean, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, John McGann, but didn't we have a billboard taken down because it was talking about drinking, and it was right near your property? That was a billboard. You're talking about putting in a business. And I know that it's legal. I'm not objecting to that. I just think it's the wrong spot. And so I would have to stand against this at this time. And as far as the police doing work, They are strained to the max as it is now. We are, we give them all the credit in the world. I wouldn't take their job. I don't care how much you pay me, but we just don't have enough police officers to be also maintaining, watching a business. And like I said, I will stand against this, and I would like to be put on record for that. And thank you very much for your time, and good luck. Thank you.
Hey, Haley, I just wanted to respond just quickly if I could. We're very familiar with the wonderful work at the Gavin Foundation and appreciate the support services they provide and the individuals they provide them to. No location is going to be perfect, and we want to look to work with the Gavin Foundation and support what they're doing and, keep their residents and the clients they serve safe and on track. And we want to reaffirm that we are, share the community's commitment to youth and keeping cannabis out of the hands of children. So I think we agree with the comments so far.
Thank you. Next up was Phyllis, but she's not here anymore. Phyllis had a question and said, do the customers need appointments?
So we will have a reservation system, and we are, to considering reservations if it's out of hand. But and we imagine that most of our customers will make reservations and show up at the time they are scheduled for.
Thank you. Next up, we have Laurie. 1 second. Laurie, you're unmuted.
Hi, everyone. I have to leave in a few seconds. Actually, I thought it was an excellent presentation, very thorough and well done. I'm a professor of mental health counseling and behavioral medicine at Boston University School of Medicine. I'm also a mental health counselor. I believe in the positive effects of medical marijuana. My clients use it. However, I also live next to the Gavin Foundation, where currently there's probably 100 to 150 people outside my door right now at an AA meeting. And I find that the location of the business is bordering on unethical. With the tremendous amount of work that's being done with the Gavin Foundation, the triggers that these recovered and these addicts that are struggling will face on a daily basis, I don't feel like is the right move. However, again, I do see the benefits of medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, but I'm quite concerned about the location. I have been in awe with the number of people that are seeking services right now. Again, at least 100, sometimes 150 people outside my door seeking services right now. So I just wanted to be on record. Again, good presentation, great presentation. I just think this area is hurting right now, and I think it would be too much of a trigger. And with my background, I know quite a lot about substance abuse and triggers. I just don't think it's the right location.
Thank you. So next up we have Dennis. I just want to read the list. So Dennis, David, Brian, Margaret, Karen, Stephen, and then Christopher, R.O.B. I can't see your full last name, but that will be the list of the speakers. Just want to make everybody know so they know who's up next. Dennis, 1 second. Dennis, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me, Haley?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Haley. Just want to make just 2 quick comments because I don't want to take up too much time. Or actually, one is a question. Due to the parking that was brought up earlier, I know that's a sensitive issue. I just want to say that people will park at that speedway. That's right down the street. They have parking in their lot. So I just want to make sure that the owner of that speedway is aware of this proposal and to find any of their comments or concerns. As far as the proposal, I thought it was a good proposal, but I'm with Councilor Flynn and the other folks, and all I would want to just amplify that it's not just the Gavin House. There's several other services, community services that are around the area that you're probably not aware of. And I'm sure Patty could give you the list. But there's, halfway houses, Methadone Mile, churches that AA meetings. So all that, I just want to reiterate that, I just don't think that this is the appropriate area for such a service. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you, Dennis. Next up, we have David. 1 second. David, you're unmuted.
Hello, this is David Byrne, a South Boston resident my entire life.
You're muted. Wait. Are you muted?
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry. So, like I was saying, I'm David Byrne. I'm a lifelong South Boston resident. I have 3 young children. I'm a homeowner on 7 Cottage Street, Kaylin, David, and Juliet Byrne. I'm completely opposed to this development and to this marijuana facility in my neighborhood. Constantly, my children are playing on the street, playing hockey, playing basketball, going to the Boys and Girls Club. I feel like this would be a negative impact to my family and other families that are on my street and in my neighborhood, because there are a lot of families here. And just like Mr. Flynn said, Patty said, and Mr. McGann, you had a lot of great points. I know that being a South Boston resident and living here, I really appreciate those points, and I agree with them. It's taken a long time, and a lot of families have left South Boston, and I'm not going to do that. But I definitely am going to fight this tooth and nail, because I don't think it's something that we need in our neighborhood. Already, there are about 3 private ways where these private ways, this is where the owners of the building, that's where they park. So you don't have that parking as well. The parking on Old Colony Ave, you have street cleaning, and then when there's a snowstorm, you can't park there as well. I think the flow of traffic, people are underestimating how busy Old Colony Avenue really gets, and it's the side streets become cut throughs, and people are burning down, and Ubers are coming down them constantly, and it's putting young children at risk constantly. So I think that's all I have to say. But yeah, I'm completely against this project. It's a very tempting offer for these kids that are trying to change their life. From the Gavin House, whether it be the one across the street from Dunkin' Donuts and the one that's closer to me, between Lock Street and Cottage Street. Not to mention you have the Notre Dame school that's supposed to be going back in with this higher education and working with high school kids trying to get their GED who couldn't make it through high school. So that's another influence on them that would be bad. So thank you very much for your time.
Hello, if I may, this is Peter DiCaro again, the retail operations consultant. And I'd just like to point out that, and these are all very valid concerns, in our history, we've opened not only adult use cannabis stores, but we've also opened medical marijuana dispensaries. And number one, I think it's just important to mention, while all of these, and addiction is near and dear to all of us, as we've all been faced with a significant opiate epidemic, the data has shown nationwide that there's been a significant reduction in states that have adopted this policy to help curb opiate-related deaths. And again, while I understand that is just one statistic, there's a general thought process out there that we see all the time, where cannabis dispensaries are going to further advance this type of behavior, and what we've seen is quite the opposite. We've opened in centers such as Northampton and in Millbury and Worcester, Massachusetts, where we've been around the corner from substance abuse centers and clinics. We've worked hand in hand on educational material to put it out to the community to let people know the pros and cons associated with cannabis use. Because although it carries an adult use nomenclature or a recreational type of concept, there are still many people that seek out adult use operations like this for treatment. And there are several of those that will seek out these centers for mental health relief, or those that have certain employment opportunities where they may be drug screened and need to remain somewhat anonymous. So again, while I do appreciate the fact that this isn't a family atmosphere, we've opened in other centers that have had family neighborhoods associated with those. And in going in, we've faced many of these same concerns. And once opened, many of these neighborhoods have realized that not only have we brought a significant improvement to the neighborhood, but the operation in working in tandem with local centers, like the Gavin Foundation, have proved to be that much more beneficial. Now, look, this is a highly subjective, conversation. And again, many of us here, myself included, have been personally impacted by this epidemic. And it's one of the reasons why I represent this industry. I've seen it from the use of prescription drugs As a cancer survivor myself, I've seen my peers that have been survivors from cancer that have gone down a negative path as a result of opiate use. And I've seen cannabis been used to help curb that substance abuse. And again, while recovery is again subjective, we look at that in terms of not being able to use any mind-altering substances versus using things like methadone and Suboxone as a way to treat these ailments. We've seen cannabis be positively used in many of these settings. And in fact, we're seeing studies out of the West Coast where cannabis is being used as part of the recovery process. Now, separately as a patient, I've also worked as an employer where I've worked with the Commonwealth here. I brought those out incarcerated, those that have been negatively impacted by the war on drugs, into the workplace. I've worked with work release programs for those that have suffered from substance abuse. I brought them back into the workplace, and we've seen an amount of success. Candidly, I mean, there is a large rate of return that's outside of our control. But sites like this can be used very positively to curb those behaviors. And again, it's not to suggest that any of these opinions that we all have, they're very reasonable. Again, we've all experienced it. I can only tell you, as someone that's opened multiple centers with a great deal of success and in working with homeless shelters that house those that are in recovery, this has been positive. Jeremiah's Inn is one of those shelters in Worcester, Massachusetts that we work with. We're working with 2 other recovery centers in Northampton as part of our positive impact plan in Northampton to help those in recovery by making donations to those centers and using our influence to positively impact communities. So I think that, all of these responses, while extremely, justified and reasonable, I just have to tell you in my experience that there can be a significant gain when working in tandem with a strong operator in the Boston area to provide the type of environment we all want. And I am a Massachusetts native, born and raised. I'm from Central Massachusetts. And this has been a subject that's near and dear to my heart. And I can tell you that in the team that's formed here, I've seen operators that operate at the highest level of urgencies and sensitivity to these things. And I've seen those that, frankly, did not have that same belief. And I can tell you that this group is the type of group that if you're looking for an entity that could come in somewhat in the neighborhood and be a partner to the community and participate financially as well as in terms of volunteer time to helping these causes, this is the type of operation that would do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Brian. Brian Nee, you're unmuted.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you for the presentation. You guys did a great job. I know some people who are working for this company. Peter, you were just talking about the positive effect it has on people in recovery. Did you open any places that were across from adolescent places that serve 14 to 18-year-old boys and girls?
So the centers that we've opened near have been, we've opened next to methadone clinics. We've opened next to in-house rehabilitation centers. As far as children between the ages of 14 and 18, in Northampton, we've opened up down the street. I don't know exactly what their ages are. However, so I can't speak necessarily to my firsthand experience dealing with teenagers. What I can say is that in all of the locations that we've operated, again, it's a general opinion that you're dealing with a large community of, let's say, mid-20s type of consumers that are coming in that carry a certain type of behavior. And in all of the settings that we've operated, particularly here in Massachusetts, none of them could have been further from the truth. We've serviced more 70-plus-year-old grandmothers and grandfathers suffering from debilitating conditions on both the medical and the adult use side. And that's probably one of the greatest satisfactions that we have to the industry. Now, when it's come to the sensitivity around addiction. We've used opportunities to use our financial resources, as well as, and I want to be clear on this because this is very important, our volunteer time. It's not just about the money to the community. It needs to be something that's visual. We've spent our time and our staff in volunteering, being visual, and educating people that we're not here just to get people high. We're not selling, we're not trying to put that message out on the street. We provide educational material that also supports what's happening on the medical use side. We put out material that speaks to glaucoma, cancer, fibromyalgia, epilepsy. So people coming into the store are being educated on those fronts. And I'll tell you that in my experience, most recently in the Commonwealth, we've opened co-located stores, again, the most recent being in Worcester that opened about 6 months ago. And of that, when we look at the balance of sales coming into that, we're seeing well over 50% of people coming in to satisfy a medical ailment. So, I appreciate your sensitivity to that type of environment, but these locations are not putting up neon signs. They're not putting point of purchase displays. These are very sophisticated medical looking facilities. And if you look at the improvement that we're making to the neighborhood, it doesn't speak to a place that's just trying to, put cannabis out, or a place where people are going to walk in the front door and go outside around back and sell it. Those types of behaviors are going to be highly monitored. So we don't use this platform for opening an adult use to suggest that this is purely a financially driven philosophy. As part of the positive impact plan of the business, we can be very involved in the root issues that you're experiencing in this neighborhood. And I would almost ask the community to say, these are such valid points. How can we participate in terms, of our positive impact plan to not only put out material that supports all of these endeavors, but how can we contribute to it? How can we financially and voluntarily add to these, to these initiatives that you're trying to move forward with? That's the type of community we're trying to move into. Sorry.
I just want to go on the record also being against this. I know you have some other people who want to ask questions, but I just don't see what the benefit you're talking about for 14 to 18-year-old youths who are trying to recover from substance abuse. And some of them I'm on the Gavin House board in our program for being addicted to marijuana. So I don't know how we're going to give them some marijuana and make them feel good, and that's going to help them out. I'm just shocked that someone would propose something like this across from 2 recovery programs, especially in South Boston, where we suffered enough from addiction. I mean, this has been going on for 25 years. And for myself being in recovery, the first thing I tried was marijuana. I know it's legal and I know people smoke it. Great for them and they're able to. They have a great time. But someone who's in addiction, that's a gateway for a relapse, or they might even be in addiction from marijuana, especially the youth. So this is a terrible idea. I hope you don't own that building and we can find somewhere else around in the neighborhood where you can open a place, but across from 2 recovery programs, that's an awful idea. I'm just shocked that this was even proposed. I'm hoping they didn't know that there was 2 recovery programs across the street. So thank you. I want to go on the record against it.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. That's noted. Next up, we have Margaret. I'm going to unmute you, but I just also want to say to the team, I understand that you guys want to rebuttal all the things, but I just do want to take the moment that this is a time you guys had to present and explain yourself and explain what you guys are presenting. This is the time for you guys to listen to the questions. Obviously, you can reply to them, but can we just keep it a little bit shorter just because it is their time to speak? 1 second. Margaret, you're unmuted.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks so much for the presentation. I'm a neighborhood resident and an 18-year member of the Gavin Foundation Board of Directors. And, we have done so much work in the community around substance abuse services. I guess my question is, when you were looking for a spot to site this, were you even aware that there were 2 recovery programs within a city block of this site?
Arish, do you want to tackle that one?
Yep, I can answer that. So Yes, we were familiar with the uses around our area. We cited a location that, fit the criteria set by the city of Boston and the Boston Cannabis Board. And, there's no location that is perfect. And we think that this location is better than the one that is proposed in a more existing residential or pedestrian-oriented neighborhood. We understand that there's residential coming in this neighborhood, but it is in fact currently an industrial and commercial area. And at the end of the day, if this site is not chosen, another location in this neighborhood, very well the store next door could be used as the site of a dispensary. And at the end of the day, we want to really promise the community that, we are going to be here and provide a service that's safe and work with the community, but also that this location is going to be discreet. It's going to have limited signage. In addition to that, from the Cannabis Control Commission regulations, there will be no view inside the retail space. And obviously, we're going to have a security presence that's going to increase the safety of the neighborhood. So overall, we understand the uses around us, and we really just want to work with everybody to determine the best path forward to make sure that, both the residents are happy and the abutting businesses are able to continue forward as they have been.
Okay. I mean, I thought maybe you weren't aware that those services were there. It seems to me that it's just a horrible, horrible spot to cite this. If you drive down Old Colony Ave in the morning, I often go down there and pull into Dunkin' Donuts to get my coffee in the morning, and there are hordes of kids that are in that recovery program, the Cushing House, right outside, making their way over for coffee in the morning, right within vision of where you would like to cite this. The other point I just wanted to bring up is, the gentleman, Peter, I think, had talked a lot about, medicinal benefits of marijuana, but this is not a medical shop, correct? This is recreational. You'll sell edibles and all those sorts of things there?
Yes, right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I would just like to go on the record as being opposed to it. I know this is a legal business now. I just think it's a horrible, horrible place to try to cite it, considering everything that's going on in the neighborhood around recovery services.
Thank you, Margaret. That's noted. Next up, we have Karen. Karen, I'm going to unmute you. Karen, you're unmuted.
Thank you. I live on East Street, right off of Old Colony Avenue. And I've lived here for 40 years. And it's not just becoming a neighborhood, it has been a neighborhood full of families for many, many years. So just on the record to that. I agree with what Linda and Patty said about the Andrew Square Civic Association and all they have done to make this a more vibrant neighborhood. I also agree with John McGann, and the proximity to both the Gavin Foundation buildings is not a good fit. As for the traffic issue and the parking that would filter into our neighborhoods, which it would, believe me, that's really an issue. And also, may I respectfully ask, how close to a cannabis center are any of your own personal residences? That's just a question. Since it's going to be in ours, I feel like maybe you'd like to just say if any are in your neighborhoods, that would help. And to sum it up, I guess nobody's going to answer. I want the record, I am firmly against this being in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. To the team, does anybody want to answer her question?
There isn't one close to where I live, but there's not a lot that have sprouted up in Massachusetts or Boston yet. So there could be, but Arish is not too far from the site.
Neighborhood.
Karen, we didn't hear you. What'd you say? Karen, did you say something else?
No, I was just doing something in my house, sorry.
Oh, okay. Next up, we have Stephen. Stephen, you're unmuted.
Hi, I just wanted to just kind of comment that I also, for the reasons, I mean, it's a great presentation. Looks like they've done a really great business plan. But I just think it's the wrong location as well because of the demographics and logistics. I just don't think it's the right spot. So I just wanted to be on the record for that as well. I can't support that at this time. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Chris. Chris, you're unmuted.
Oh, great. Thanks. Good evening. My name is Chris Robinson, and I'm a resident of Andrew Square. As it's been mentioned a number of times, this neighborhood is up and coming, and we're trying to minimize the amount of drug activity in the neighborhood.
Easy on the spray, baby kids.
Yeah, so it was brought up that, case studies and surveys were carried out, and it was supposedly supposed to curb certain behaviors, but, it wasn't talked about or mentioned by how much and over, what time duration, So I'm just going to echo what, my neighbors have already, communicated that this is not the right neighborhood. And, I want to go on record by saying that
Can you guys hear him, or didn't we lose him?
Could you guys hear me?
Now we can. It just cut out. Sorry. You said you want to go on record and then it cut out.
Okay, I just wanted to go on record, opposing this this idea.
Thank you, Chris. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Next up, we have David. Looks like David left, so we'll go to the next one. Shannon, I'm going to unmute you 1 second. Shannon, you're unmuted.
Thanks. I just, I'm not sure if this question was asked or answered, but has it been disclosed whether or not you own this building?
I can take this one. We have a long-term lease agreement on this property with an option to purchase it in the future, contingent upon our marijuana licensing.
Okay. And I guess I would just, I'm going to be a very counter opposing opinion to the neighborhood group, but I think that the reality is that one, there's going to probably be one in South Boston. I think two, there's possibly a need in South Boston for this. I think the fact that it is near several, the elderly community that's by the Old Colony Rotary could be a possible benefit for them. And as, for the folks that have, I understand the contention regarding the location. And I think that's going to be hindered by the fact that you've already gone into a long-term lease, especially with, maybe an option in that like new Washington Village. But I think that, it's likely it's going to be in this area. And the fact that the addiction facility is across the street, it's definitely an understandable concern. And I would say that one, if passed, I would like a commitment from the group that you would be dedicating educational funds or resources to the nearby groups. Two, that you would make a commitment to come to both the Andrew Square and West Broadway community meetings every month, or some representative from your community, because I think it's important that if you are going to be part of this neighborhood and it's going to be this benefit supposedly that you make that commitment. I just think that yes, we are dealing with huge addictions, but the reality is that no one's talking about the fact that you can buy alcohol at any store within a 15-foot or 150-foot radius of that facility as well. I think we need to start looking at marijuana in the same light that we do alcohol, in the fact that it's regulated, that it is monitored, that there are federal and state, you know, like laws and people that have to abide by certain rules, and that anybody going in to buy that is going to be that. No one's going to be walking out of a recreational place with enough weed that someone's going to be wanting to rob them. The other question that I also had is, do you guys bifurcate your pricing between a medical, somebody coming in for medical needs versus recreational needs?
So I can address the first part. I said in the beginning, Arish is a South Boston resident, so we will commit to attending the WBNA and Andrew Square Civic Association on a monthly basis, and obviously make him accessible to any community concerns. And just want to reiterate quickly that we appreciate and empathize with the Gavin Foundation for all that they do, and want to do everything we can to make it right and problem solve and work with them. And then I don't know, Peter, if you want to speak to the pricing, or Eric.
I suppose I can take that. So pricing is regulated pretty tightly by the Cannabis Control Commission. I think that that's a great point given the community. And I think that there could be ways that we could potentially offer some incentives there. But that is something that would need to ultimately be approved by the CCC as part of the compliance process.
Because my understanding is that the Brookline facility, the pricing for medical is different than recreational.
Yes. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that was what I was just going to say.
No, usually in a co-located facility, you can certainly have different pricing schemes for medical and for adult. The adult use pricing model, it needs to be relatively consistent. There aren't too many options for things like discounting within the CCC regs. That being said, there are potential ways that we may be able to offer certain incentives, whether it be through loyalty programs and things of that nature. But that's certainly something that could be noted and that we could look at. Should this proceed to the next step, we could look to implementing certain pricing schemes.
Okay, and then also, is there within the cannabis community, are there delivery programs, or do you have to go to the facility? And I'm just thinking from a medical standpoint of view, for those that might be homebound, is that something that is allowed, or do they have to get a proxy to purchase it for them?
So currently under the regulations, medical marijuana dispensaries can perform home deliveries. And in fact, we have a number of facilities already that are performing home deliveries. Recently, the CCC has adopted a policy around adult use home delivery, which it entitles a certain type of applicant, social equity, or an economic empowerment applicant to perform home deliveries. So within a facility such as ours, once those applicants are able to roll out, we will be able to partner with those delivery services to perform home deliveries for adult use. But this location, it will be purely retail.
Okay, and it's a cash only business, correct?
No, approximately 50% of the sales conducted are through debit. So there are really three mechanisms for payment: cash, debit, and there are a few apps out there, one being an app called CanPay. So all three forms of payment are typically accepted in most dispensaries. And again, the balance of those transactions is approximately 50-50 today.
Are there limitations for people that are getting subsidized income, like EBT type of cards and things like that? Are there preventions from them using those types of funds for these types of transactions?
Yes, the Department of Transitional Assistance does prevent EBT cards from being used for cannabis sales, and dispensaries are required to report those point of sale numbers and ATM machines to ultimately prevent that from happening, and that's a state-driven initiative.
Okay, great. And I think I just want to make one last point to sort of the community. I hear one of the concerns is traffic, but I would just remind everybody that we've approved a Washington Village that is going to be bringing in retail and over 2,000 new residences, 600 parking spaces. So I think between Old Colony and Dorchester Ave, we already have a traffic issue that hasn't been resolved versus a small cannabis shop that might be, having an additional 10 more people driving down on an hourly basis. So, I would sort of say in regards to the traffic concern, I think we have to remember that we've got a bigger fish in this pond right now. That's going to be the issue. So that's all I have. I appreciate you answering my questions.
Thank you, Shannon. I just want to go through the list of people who are up next. So next we have Ryan, then Fran, Amir, Will, Suzanne, David, David's wife, sorry, Brendan Flynn, and I think that's everybody that we have for now. And again, I just want to emphasize that I want everybody to be able to speak. We do have less than a half an hour left in this meeting. So if you want to reiterate something, I just ask that you guys bring new stuff to the table or just make it brief if you're disagreeing with what everybody else said. Thank you. So Ryan, you're up. 1 second. Ryan, you're unmuted.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time tonight. I live on Carter Street, right across the street from this proposed facility. I just want to go on record and oppose this project. This neighborhood has a lot of families, a lot of kids still in this neighborhood. I just don't think this is a good fit for the neighborhood. I haven't heard one positive aspect of this proposal that would bring anything to the table to this neighborhood. Just reiterating what Patty McCormick from Andrew Square said, along with many other people. Just don't think it's a good fit. I know it's not a question of legality at this point and all that. Everyone has their own opinions on marijuana and all that stuff. But I think, like Mr. McGann mentioned with the Gavin Foundation and Brian Nee mentioned, I just want to reiterate all those points. And the block, I have 4 kids myself, varying from 10 to 1. We have, just on my block alone, there's about 15 to 20 kids, all of those varying ages, and it's just not a good fit. There's a time and place for everything. I just think this isn't the time or the place for this facility. And like the last speaker just mentioned about Washington Village, she's 100% right. We haven't solved any issues about traffic, about congestion, and they keep approving more and more stuff. And I agree with her 100%. But does that mean we just keep allowing more stuff to get approved? I agree. I think Washington Village is going to bring a tremendous amount of traffic to an already congested area. But do we just keep approving more and more? But this is a whole nother animal, being a pod shop in South Boston. So, I respectfully oppose this project and wish everybody a good night. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ryan. That's noted. Fran, you're unmuted.
Yes. Good evening. Hi, Haley. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Can you hear me? My name is Fran Adams. I'm an attorney in Boston. I represent South Boston Auto, Mr. Tony Rash, who is the director butter to the project. He owns the auto body shop to your left of the building. A lifelong South Boston business person. Just at this point, Mr. Rash has very serious reservations about the project. I did speak with the project team. I believe it was on Monday, and that was a good initial conversation. So I just wanted to go on the record. And now Mr. Rash does have reservations. We did speak with the team and hope to have some additional information going forward, but he wanted to publicly state his position at this point. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Fran. Next up, we have Amir. 1 second, Amir. Amir, you're unmuted.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Just wanted to chime in. I'm a resident of South Boston, and my parents are as well. I just wanted to unequivocally come out and say I completely support this proposal and this position. I think it's something that is inevitable that's going to happen one place or another. And I think if it were to happen, I'm quite impressed at the presentation that was given. And I think this team is has the right head on their shoulders and are very aware of what's been the aspects that many of the people here have raised. My own personal opinion is that, you know, I just quickly counted, there are 12 liquor stores in South Boston and dozens of restaurants that also serve alcohol, and, you know, one recreational marijuana dispensary can have a 5 or 6 year process to open up. And I think, you know, the city of Boston has set it up in a way for it to have, you know, the highest degree of due diligence for something that arguably is less impactful than alcohol is. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Amir. Next up, we have Will. Will, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
you. All right. I'm Will Ostergaard. I'm the chairman of the board of the Gavin Foundation. So you automatically know I completely oppose this. Bad location, it's a bad idea. It was a good sales pitch, but it shouldn't be happening in this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. Suzanne is up next. I just want to let a caller in, someone who's calling in, 617-407. I just want to let you know that I do see your hand raised, so you are on the list to speak. But Suzanne, you're unmuted.
Hi, guys. I just wanted to lend my support to this project. I'm a local business owner in South Boston. I do a lot of business in Boston, have clients and properties around, and I am in support of this. I also have a family myself and children, and I think that we need to start being forward thinking about cannabis. My children know about cannabis. And I think it's something that if you have families in the neighborhood, it's something that you should be talked about. Cannabis is something that shouldn't be shunned or afraid of. It's a healing medicine for so many people out there. It's a great resource, an alternative medicine to many of the things that are on the market. Well, I do understand about addiction. I've got a lot of addiction throughout my family and understand it. I do think that cannabis is something that the people need to start seeing the healing remedies of it. And the positivities that it can bring, and that we shouldn't be afraid to have our children walk by a cannabis shop any more than we should be afraid to have our children walk by a liquor shop around the corner, or a junk food store or anything like that. So I'm in support of this. I think South Boston is a community, and I would want people who live in that community to get their cannabis remedies right in their community and have the tax dollars and things that go like that for the community as well. So I'm definitely for it, and I think it's a need of the community that should be fulfilled within the community itself located. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jen.
Hi, this is Jennifer Byrne. I'm a resident of the neighborhood Cottage Street. I just want to say I completely oppose this facility. Many reasons. I have 3 small kids. That it seems, I believe you said the hours would be 9 to 9. Just seems like an awful late hour for people to be getting some recreational marijuana. Especially because at that time of night on, say, a Friday, they might be, drinking, driving. I know you can't control all that, but I am a business professional, and I come home from Andrew Station and walk up, and there's many times that I've been asked and offered and, to have drugs by people where I'm just quietly minding my business going home, and I'd be very nervous with these children that are trying to get help at both the Gavin Foundation, that they're going to be, tempted, and they can easily ask somebody to do something for them. And another point, there is no actual liquor store along all of Old Colony Avenue until you get all the way to the very end at Rotary Liquors. And I just think that, with the amount of traffic, how fast people go, the side streets that are cut through all the time, it's just going to add to danger. And there's just, I just think it's in a terrible spot where people are trying to get help. And I oppose this project.
Thank you, Jen. That's noted. Next up, we have Brendan Flynn. Brendan, you're unmuted. Brendan, can you hear us? Brendan? All right, we'll come back to him. Was ever calling in from 617-407? You're unmuted.
Yes, it's Mary Moore from Andrews Square. I'm a
Hi, Mary.
longtime resident. Hey there. One thing that I heard earlier, and I'm just trying to check and make sure I heard this correctly, is that if this particular location does not work out, that somehow this facility would be located somewhere else in Andrews Square. Would someone on the team be able to respond to that?
Arish, you want to take that?
Sure. I think respectfully, that might be a Haley question. Maybe Haley, if you want to speak briefly to the zoning regulations and where cannabis establishments are and are not allowed, and the current proposals in this region, and what would or wouldn't happen if we were to select this location and the buffer zones drawn around it.
Mary, I don't know. I can connect you with ISD if you follow up with me in email. ISD handles all like the actual refusal letters and the actual permitting part. My part of the process is the community process. But I do know that there's the radius. So say if this one got approved, another one wouldn't be in that radius of it. So it's all kind of depending on which ones get approved, where other ones could go, if that makes sense. But again, if you send me an email, I can get you the ISD's explanation of it.
No, I'm actually responding to something I thought someone on the team said, which is if this particular location doesn't work out, that it could happen 2 doors down at another location. So I'm trying to figure out if that's the case. If this location doesn't work, does the team envision, no matter what, Andrews Square is on the sort of target list for a cannabis location with this group?
Yes. So the mention in the presentation was that it is without a doubt a possibility that if our location is not approved, that a location next door, 2 doors behind us, 1 door aside from us, within our half-mile buffer zone that we've set, another applicant has the ability to cite a location within that circle. So to answer your question, Andrews Square, and whether it's directly in the heart of Andrews Square or out in this industrial area where we are proposing it, will ultimately have a retail cannabis dispensary within its broader neighborhood. Whether, like I said, it's at our specific location far enough away from the heart of the neighborhood or any other location within that allowable half-mile buffer zone.
Okay, so the other point I want to make is it's true that this is society-wide it's inevitable, or city-wide it's inevitable for cannabis locations for sure. But to put it in our neighborhood, we have experience with liquor stores. For example, having a liquor store in Andrews Square looks a lot different than a liquor store probably in Brookline Village. It just has a different feel. It attracts different people. It's not apples to apples to say, well, a cannabis store, they're becoming more common, or should be. We have to treat them that way and look at them like, we look at liquor stores. Because in Andrews Square, anything that is related to addiction has a whole different look and feel to it for us. It draws more people. It draws a different types of people. It's a whole different thing. So it's really an unfair comparison. I agree with those that say this is not the right place for this, but perhaps if you work with the elected officials in South Boston, if everyone thinks it's inevitable, or people feel it's inevitable for South Boston to get such an outlet, then maybe work with the elected officials to find out what the right spot is. Our neighborhood isn't. It's not the right location for this. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brendan, I'm going to try to unmute you again if you can hear us. Can you hear us? All right. Nino, you're unmuted.
Thanks, Ellie. Thanks, team. I really I caught the presentation late. I think you guys are well versed in the business and the particular issues that you face. I think there's a stigma around marijuana, which is unfortunate, but will have to change as we try to educate people on it. Myself, as a recreational user, I go to Netter Brookline, where I think they do a really great job handling traffic as well as dealing with the security issues and having people directing traffic outside. My only reservation, is just that the Gavin House is right across from it, and that, in itself is tough, given that the neighborhood, Andrew Square, is where I started when I first moved here in '05. So I'm familiar with the neighborhood, and knowing that that's been there, it's just they've done a lot of work to try and move things along. And I'd echo what the previous caller had said. There's just a different crowd around that area. And so, while I appreciate the presentation, I think you guys are the right team for this, I just think that the location is not the right fit. Thank you.
Thank you. David Byrne asked, will there be an ATM on site?
There will be an ATM on site.
Okay. Just waiting. Brendan is going to call in on his phone. Just waiting to see if somebody new pops in so we know it's him. I don't see any new hands raised. So again, if you're calling in from the phone and want to raise your hand, please dial *3 and I'll see that your hand is raised. And if you're on the computer, just click the raise the hand button or type in the chat. Again, I'm just going to give him a few minutes to call in. But because we do have less than 10 minutes left, the ending, I do want to tell everybody here, please send us an email with your positions, your feedback, any questions, comments, concerns. If you guys want the presentation emailed to you, you can find my email at boston.gov/Southie, boston.gov/South Boston, and I will spell it for you, HALEY.DILLON @boston.gov. So please contact all of us, and we'll send that directly to Stephanie at the zoning board and the cannabis board and any other elected officials wanting to know. I don't think Brendan has joined, but we can definitely follow up with him, and your team can get on the phone if he has any questions you want to ask vocally. If there are any other questions, please raise your hand now. If not, I'm going to end the meeting. Maybe it says Brendan?
Yes, hello.
Oh, perfect. Okay, here we go.
Oh, okay, thank you. So sorry about all the inconvenience about not being able to get on, but I appreciate everyone for hearing me out. I've been listening to everyone, and my 2 cents about what's going on is that there is a need for this in this city, and there's a reason that it was legalized. I understand everyone's position about problems with addiction because that is a serious issue. I personally do not live in South Boston, so I cannot speak to how it is affecting the community and if there would be an issue with the programs that are surrounding it. What I want to add to the discussion is my relationship with Arish and how much I respect his ability to be able to run a business in the community effectively. So I want to just try to be able to explain that I think that if there were a business or a dispensary, that I believe that Arish would be an excellent person to run this business because of the things that he's already tried to be a part of as a member of Boston, which are to give its members information about real estate, which is one of the things I know him from, and also as a mortgage lender. And I've known him for under a year, and he's been able to get licensed in both of those while also being in a pandemic. So if there were the need for this in this location, there's no question that I think Arish would be an excellent person to run this business. And I personally support people who are into marijuana as a medical purpose, because I've had relationships with people that have had addiction that have been able to kick it using marijuana as something in the short term. So that's all I have to say. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you very much. So I don't see any new hands raised. So at this time, I'm going to end the meeting. And I want to say thank you to everybody for coming and taking the time. And again, please follow up with us, boston.gov/South Boston. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, guys.